It's 6 p.m. here in Korea. Good to have you with us. I'm Daniel Che for Arirang News. Here are the headlines. The Public Employee Pension Reform Bill was not passed at the National Assembly. The presidential office assured the public that efforts to change the system are ongoing and urged lawmakers to quickly approve the bill. Samsung Electronics broke ground on a new chip production line in Pyeongtaek. The $14 billion plant marks the Korean tech giant's largest ever investment in a single production line. An 86-year-old Lee Yong-soo, a survivor of wartime sexual slavery, continues her physically and emotionally draining campaign for a formal apology from Japan. She flew to the U.S. during Shinzo Abe's American tour, and yesterday she visited Glendale, California to see the Comfort Women Monument. We start at the National Assembly a day after the country's main rival political parties failed to agree on a bill to reform the public employee pension plan. The presidential office urged lawmakers to move forward. Our Choy starts us off.
The presidential office has expressed regret over the Assembly's failure on Wednesday to pass a bill to reform the country's deficit-ridden public employee pension system. In a statement on Thursday, President Bak's senior press secretary Kim Sung-woo started by pointing out shortcomings in the civil service pension reform plan suggested by Korea's rival political parties, echoing the president's earlier remarks that the size and time frame for monthly pension payment cuts were disappointing.
The extent of the bipartisan reform plan fell far short of the initial objective, but we recognize the start of bipartisan efforts to reform.
Kim then said the party's deal to link the national pension plan to the civil service pension reform bill involves state finances and should be addressed separately. The proposal to raise the national pension coverage to 50% of an average subscriber's income level was Wednesday's bone of contention.
If the political parties truly care about the public and are in politics for the people, they should first reform the public employee pension. Then they should gather public opinion on the national pension system and ensure financial integrity before introducing a plan to boost retirement payouts.
The press secretary also called on the political parties to fulfill their promises to the public and approve a slate of pending bills that aim to enhance the economic well-being of all Koreans. Choy, Arirang News.
Korean lawmakers will head back to the assembly to clear up some unfinished business. Yesterday, on the last day of the extraordinary session, political wrangling stalled a bill to reform the civil servant pension system, as well as other economic revitalization measures. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
The trouble started last Saturday when the ruling Saenuri Party and the opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy agreed to attach national pension service reforms to the main public servant pension bill. However, after President Park Geun-hye criticized the national pension reforms, the ruling party backed away from the agreement. The NPAD attempted to introduce a new clause to pass the bills, but that didn't work either.
I conclude that it was not right to change what the rival parties' leaders had originally agreed upon.
That left the two parties in a deadlock. Voting on some 100 economic revitalization bills was cancelled as the NPAD refused to turn up at Wednesday's plenary, blasting the ruling party for not sticking to the original pension deal.
It is the most humiliating and the most insulting day. The ruling party trashed the deal that we agreed upon.
In order to end the standoff on Thursday, the NPAD requested an extra parliamentary session to start next Monday. National Assembly Speaker Chung Yi-hwa gave his approval. During the new session, the rival parties hope to fix a date to pass the stalled pension reform bill for civil servants. The NPAD's newly elected floor leader Lee Chong-gul will carry out negotiations with the ruling party starting next week. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Korea's biggest tech company is getting even bigger. Samsung Electronics unveiled plans for a gigantic factory. The plan, expected to begin rolling in the first half of 2017, got a head start thanks to the government's deregulation drive. Our Shin Se-min takes us to the scene.
This construction site will be home to Samsung Electronics' new DRAM memory chip line at a cost of $14.5 billion. It's being built in Pyeongtaek, 70 kilometers south of Seoul, and will officially begin churning out chips in the first half of 2017. With this addition to the already existing massive production line in Gihung and Hwaseong, Samsung says it will be able to solidify its lead in the global chip business. The tech giant also aims to grow its presence in the semiconductor sector, hoping to drive up its sagging smartphone earnings. The Pyeongtaek project is massive, Samsung's largest ever investment in a single production line. It's expected to generate 150,000 jobs and produce $37 billion in revenue. In a written statement, the company said that the Pyeongtaek line will give the company a leg up in the Internet of Things industry. And since the new plant couples well with President Park Geun-hye's deregulation push, investments in the plant accelerated, and the government was able to help with steady electric power and industrial water supplies. President Park attended the opening ceremony, saying the government will continue to raise the competitiveness of the industry by eliminating regulations in order to boost high-value product industries like the system semiconductors. Since entering the market 40 years ago, Samsung Electronics has led the global memory chip market for the last 22 years. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The Korean government plans to create 6,700 new jobs for young people in the span of 2 years by implementing a job-sharing measure. The finance ministry says the so-called wage peak system is set to be introduced at more than 100 public institutions starting next year. The scheme provides job security for older employees through a gradual wage cut after the age of 58. The money saved can then be used to hire more young people. The job-sharing measures come as retirement age at public institutions will rise to 60 from 58 beginning next year. The Northeast Asia cruise market has grown substantially over the past few years, and yet Korea still does not have its own cruise company. The government hopes to change all of that by launching at least one domestic cruise line within the year. That was announced on Thursday as part of a plan from the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. The plans also include allowing local residents to use casinos on cruise ships. The ministry explained that the annual number of cruise tourists exceeded 1 million last year, a 30% rise from the previous year. The goal is to raise the number of tourists to 1.2 million this year and to 3 million by the year 2020. The frosty ties between Korea and Japan over history and territory have had a negative diplomatic impact across the board, and that includes coordination on trade issues. Our Kwon So-hwa says a glint of hope may be on the horizon as the trade ministers of both countries are set to hold a rare round of talks later this month.
They are expected to be the first ministerial-level trade talks between Korea and Japan in 2 years. Korea's Trade Ministry says the offer to hold discussions came from Japan and that Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jik and his Japanese counterpart Yoichi Miyazawa have tentatively agreed to sit down on May 24th at the 2015 Boracay APEC meeting in the Philippines. A ministry official said strained relations over historical and territorial issues have severely limited opportunities for the two trade ministers to hold talks. With the time and place seemingly set, the two sides may finally be able to touch on the issue of a possible free trade agreement between Korea and Japan, as well as another three-way deal including China. Talks on the TPP, or Trans-Pacific Partnership, a regional trade pact being pushed hard by the White House, may also be included. Korea's Trade Ministry says the agenda has yet to be fixed, but the two sides are in the final stages of making adjustments. The last bilateral meeting between the trade ministers of Korea and Japan took place on the sidelines of the 2013 Indonesia APEC meeting. However, Japan's territorial claims over Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island and Tokyo's lack of repentance over its wartime sexual slavery have halted further negotiations. Korea and Japan's economic relations haven't been looking good recently either. Bilateral trade dropped by almost 14% in the first quarter of this year compared to the same period last year. Analysts mainly attribute this to the weak Japanese yen, which is eating into the price competitiveness of Korean products. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
Following Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's recent speech to the U.S. Congress, one Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sexual slavery is continuing her fight for an apology from the Japanese government. Lee Yong-soo visited California's memorial for the so-called comfort women on Wednesday in an effort to draw attention to the horrors the victims faced. Our Kim Yeon-bin tells us more.
Visiting this monument was important, but difficult for Lee Yong-soo. The statue in Glendale, California, was built to raise awareness of what happened to her and approximately 200,000 other women during World War II. He is 86 now, but looking at the bronze figure took her back to the day she was dragged from her family and forced into sexual servitude for the Imperial Japanese Army.
I was around this age at the time, but now I'm a lot different. I have changed so much.
Lee traveled to the U.S. to be present for Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's recent visit. She wanted to add her voice to the chorus of critics, calling for Abe to acknowledge and apologize for Japan's past atrocities in his Congress address. He was there for the speech, which did not include a new apology. She says Abe's behavior in Washington shows his deceptiveness and his Conservative Party's efforts to distort history. Most of Lee's fellow survivors of sexual slavery have died, but she's determined to keep fighting.
We will see if Abe's term in office will outlast me. I will live up to 200 to get an apology from him.
Lee's efforts have been backed up by criticism from the international community, including 187 historians who have since condemned Abe's view of history and called for a sincere apology. Kim Yeon-bin, Arirang News.
Moving on to national defense, the Korean Navy has welcomed another 1,800-ton submarine into its fleet, making it the sixth sub of its kind in the nation. The launching ceremony of the Yugwan-sun submarine was held on Thursday in Jeojedo Island. Defense Minister Han Min-gu and other government and military personnel were in attendance. The sub is capable of firing cruise missiles and can operate underwater for up to 2 weeks at a time. The Navy plans to commission the sub next November and utilize it to counter naval threats from Pyongyang. Over 60 years have passed since the Korean War armistice, but thousands of U.S. soldiers are still missing. Our Connie Kim files this report from the most recent war remains excavation site on the south coast of the peninsula.
Death Valley. Masan earned that name when many U.S. soldiers died here shortly after the Korean War began. They successfully repelled North Korean forces attempting to push towards the port city of Busan, but the remains of a number of the fallen never made it back to the States. With recent civilian reports that up to 6 American soldiers may have been buried in this nearby mountain, experts from South Korea and the U.S. have teamed up for a 3-day investigation. It took hours of searching and shoveling to expose just one human skeleton. At this point, the team can't determine whether it's Korean or American.
The body was buried about 1.5 meters deep because soil is moist. The remains weren't preserved well. We plan to be extra careful when transporting it to our central identification laboratory.
If the lab can verify that this skeleton came from America, it'll be repatriated to the U.S. Some 36,000 U.S. soldiers are known to have died during the Korean War. Close to 8,000 are still unaccounted for. Since 2001, only 7 American bodies have been ID'd with help from the South Korean military.
At the rate that we're going, it doesn't seem like we're making progress very quickly. This is a great challenge. It requires a lot of perseverance. It requires investigative skill. It requires scientific capability.
It'll also require time, lots of time. For now, experts from South Korea and the U.S. will continue the search, attempting to ensure that the war dead can rest in peace on home soil. Connie Kim, Arirang News, Masan.
Shifting gears now, Asia's largest test market for broadcasting content seems to grow every year. The 9th annual International Busan Contents Market is proof of that trend. The international event opened on Thursday and is recognized as a golden networking opportunity for many producers and providers from all over the world. It's a place for them to share a range of popular content, from TV dramas and documentaries to animation. 1,300 buyers and sellers registered in advance to participate in the 3-day event. They're joined by around 460 firms from more than 46 countries. And of course, Korea's one and only fully English broadcasting station, Arirang TV participated in the event, releasing its new program guide for the year. And that's all we have for you at this hour. More coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time, so do join us then. Thank you for watching.